Councillors, my apologies. We've had a technical issue for our people out there in cyberspace. We're back on air, so we'll now resume the meetings. Would someone like to move to? Thank you, Councillor Lawth. Seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, will now commence with item number 6.1, the mayoral minute, border closures by Victorian Government impacts. The following outlines Council's actions in respect to the recent Victoria border closure by Victorian Government for the information of Council. I've also completed various media requests on this matter, and we continue to lobby for improvements to the current situation. The risk associated with COVID-19 and the devastating impacts this pandemic has had continues to have the world is universally accepted. However, the snap decision by the Victorian Government to close the border to New South Wales residents, announced on New Year's Eve, 31st December 2020, and effectively from 11:59 p.m. 1st of January 2021, delivered a devastating blow to many. Note the least the Victorian Government's own residents, who were given until 11:59 p.m. New Year's Day to return home or face 14 days quarantine at their own cost. This, I understand, posed great risk to many who then had to abandon their holiday plans to travel home to Victoria. More specifically for border communities on the New South Wales side, this has caused devastating economic impacts to so many businesses reliant on the increased visitation. It is also causing extensive social mental health impacts from the financial losses and the social impacts such as the family disconnections that flowed on. The economic losses included Council's own Ball Park in Corowa, which went from 75% occupancy to almost zero in the space of one day. This resulted in over $10,000 in fees being refunded, and the flow-on effect of the loss of those visitors to the economy, of course, would be far greater. Many of our other businesses, including larger accommodation venues, would have no doubt refunded far greater amounts. This all then flows on to negative to the loss expenditure in local shops, including bakeries, retail, fuel and groceries. These businesses have all suffered and continue to suffer immensely. Murray Regional Tourism are taking a strong advocacy role in encouraging all businesses that have been impacted to complete a short survey to assist in lobbying the Victorian Government for the changes. This data will also be used in seeking further medium to long-term measures for both the Victorian, New South Wales and federal governments. Ramjo are also advocating strongly, and Council has supported a letter from Ramjo Chair to the New South Wales Premier advocating for improvements. Local Government New South Wales has also written to the Premier. See attached, the Mayor of Murray River Council has also sent correspondence to the Premier regarding the critical impacts faced by the Murray region due to the closing of the Victorian border in quick succession following the New South Wales border reopening. Murray Regional Tourism are working towards collating regional data that is timely in order to assist in evidence-based decision making. This includes a short online survey for impacted businesses. Council has completed the survey for Ball Park, and staff will also assist to promote the survey across our tourism and related industry. Ramjo also aims to inform the Premier of the dual impact to our communities from the recent New South Wales closure, and also request Dine and Discover voucher, as announced in the November budget. Include the Murray border region in the February pilot. Currently the pilot, due to be rolled out, only covers Sydney CBD, the Rocks and Broken Hill. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Meagle. Questions or comments, Councillor?
Just amend that one. Sorry, Mr Mayor, just need to amend that point 2 now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillors, with that recommendation, I'll take out point 2, which doesn't apply at the moment. Is that okay with the mover, Councillor Longmire? Seconder, Councillor Meagle. Questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, like being the councillor from Mulwala with Councillor Thomas, we've seen the effects pretty strongly what's happened in Mulwala. Like New Year's Eve was quite daunting to see everyone drive out of town. You know, accommodation, they just left everything. There was some of our accommodation things. There was bikes, there was everything. They just packed up and gone. And whatever they can fit in their car, they were gone. There was there's businesses in town. Like I spoke to the local pizza parlour. He's down 80% on what his turnover was the same year before. And the pubs and clubs. Like I went and had meetings with all the directors of the club with Susan Lay the other day, and it was devastating what they've had. Like what they don't realise, the Victorian government, is probably 80% of that staff that work in them clubs live in Yarrawonga in Victoria, and it's hurting Victorians as well as us on the New South Wales side. And like the accommodation in town, like we're all completely booked out for the month, and I think we've refunded massive amounts of money out of our accommodation what we own in town, and in 3.5, 4 hours people were queued up trying to get out of town on New Year's Eve, and a lot of them were intoxicated, and it was dangerous. Like even the police, probably a smart thing if they started breath testing the people there'd be queues. They'd be still trying to get out of Mawala at the moment because they'll tell them to pull over and go and have a rest in Yarrawonga. Apparently the showgrounds in Yarrawonga they were 10 deep with caravans in there because most of them had been, like it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, and they'd been told if you don't get home, you've got to pay for yourself 14 days quarantine, which is just ridiculous, and it's just decimated our town. Like New Year's Day, you drive them most through Mawala, you could have fired a gun down it, there was no one there. And it was just so sad to see that just one silly decision, and we've had another case, like hadn't been a case here in our council, I don't think there's ever been a case. And like to shut us down all the way along the border is just, I just can't see who makes these decisions and who makes it right.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Neagle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In support of the recommendations in your mayoral minute, and whilst I welcome the decision by the Victorian Premier yesterday, as Councillor Kennedy said, I believe we need to convey the frustration and hardship that this community has had to endure as the result of decisions made by people who have had little or no regard for border communities. As Councillor Kennedy said, the most salient point here is that our community has never had a case of community-acquired COVID-19 transmission. Yet we have experienced 3 sets of border restrictions. And it appears that every time there are outbreaks in a capital city, it is our community that suffers. I, and as Councillor Kennedy has said, and my fellow councillors, we personally witnessed the economic and emotional turmoil that has resulted from these decisions. The impact on our tourism and hospitality sectors, together with the flow-on effect to the broader community, is far more acutely felt in smaller communities such as ours. This is a community whose residents, just because they live on the border and have been arbitrarily punished for a crime that they did not commit, and they've been held to an economic ransom that they cannot afford to pay. This is a decision that 128 years ago, a region that 128 years ago sought to bring the states together, and is now a community which has been torn apart by the leaders of those very same states. We have been continually burdened by every state and territory having their own separate sets of restrictions and permit procedures. State leaders have sacrificed the economies and the mental health of this and every border community to compensate for issues in their own capital cities, which just so happens to be where they live, demonstrating little or no concern for the impact of their decisions that have been wrought on these communities. There is no argument and very good evidence that the appropriate health and movement restrictions based on medical advice should be applied. However, I contend that they should be applied to those affected geographical areas rather than the blanket statewide approach that has been implemented so far. To paraphrase Sir John Quick, one of the founders of Federation from the 1893 People's Conference held here in Corowa, the time has arrived when national unity should no longer be dependent on the battledore and shuttlecock of colonial parliamentary parties. Mr Mayor, I urge all our state leaders to come together within the National Cabinet to arrive at and agree to a consistent, national, coordinated approach to this pandemic that considers all Australians, not just those in the capital cities. An approach that has a relevance to and a meaningful understanding of the issues faced by border and rural communities. Such a solution will not only mitigate the suffering of our community, but indeed the suffering of a nation with respect to socialisation, tourism and the broader economy. And finally, to paraphrase the former Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Paul Keating, when he spoke again here in Corowa 100 years after Sir John quit, the disparities within Australia that can encourage division or fragmentation, that encourage jealousy and rivalry between states, between cities, between the urban population and the people in the country. The great majority of Australians understand, as the founders of Federation understood, that we work much better when we work as one nation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Meagle. If there be no further comment, Councillor Thomas.
I feel very humbled to be the next councillor after Councillor Meagle's. Thank you very much. Mine's very simple. And to Councillor Kennedy, thanks for highlighting the effects on our local community at Mulwala. I'm sure we've seen that right across the board, and I think we'd all bring to the table today some form of personal experience thanks to these intergovernmental decisions, especially over the Christmas, New Year period. And guess what? Traditionally, Christmas and New Year, what are we supposed to be doing? Enjoying our family and friends, and not for them to be visiting, and not for them to be worried about where their next move might be and where it could happen. And look what's happened to it. It's absolutely disgruntled our very traditional Christmas New Year gatherings. As a courtesy to our community at Mulwala and the Honourable Member for Farrer, I'd just like to thank your time and contribution to the conversation on Friday morning last. The gathering was a representation of true authenticity, reflecting the greater need to be heard due to the impounding influence of government decisions. I do know that my fellow councillor Longmire has a recommendation that he'd like to put on our table today, but I also penned one, but I'm really happy for comment, and hopefully we can bring the two together. And the one that I penned in reflection of last Friday was that Federation include a letter to fellow border councils endorsing a parliamentary inquiry into the fundamental economic and social and resource, in brackets, physical, material and mental impacts of the two border closures between New South Wales and Victoria, allowing additional quantitative strategies to be implemented. I really feel that our state governments need to have a lesson learnt approach, requiring formalising the process of border closures at a federal level through the delivery by the National Cabinet. And I just also want to give thought to our own local government areas, because they have been at the forefront of delivering both closures and hence fully support the opportunity to explore reimbursement on costs associated with COVID-19, especially within our local government areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. If there be no further, I'll put that particular motion. All in favour, councillors? Aye. Against? Carried. Sorry, Councillor Long, did you?
Mr Mayor, I may like to introduce a motion with your or council's permission in regard to the topic subject that we're on.
I consider that urgent, Councillor Longmire, so please come forward with the motion.
With your permission, Mr Mayor, can I ask council to consider the motion, the following motion, which I hope you've got a copy of there. This is a short time factor, but I think it's important that whilst we're identifying a lot of problems, Councillor Thomas in her comments made particular notice towards some effective result. There's something we can do to fix it up. And so I'll just dovetail into what she's spoken about with this opportunity to move a motion. And the motion is that Federal Council write to the Prime Minister requesting that the Federal Government, by an independent panel of eminent persons, revisit our National Constitution, Section 92, for the purpose of upgrading the cross-border anomalies of mental health, human well-being and economic impact that are associated with the coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor Longmire. Do we have a seconder, councillors? Seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments there, councillors, in relation to the motion? If not, I shall put...
wait till Michelle gets... we'll just get the time.
Mr Mayor, may I speak to the motion?
Absolutely, Councillor Longmire.
Thank you for that opportunity. Perhaps it may be fitting that 120 years ago, Corola's Federation League hosted a meeting of 72 delegates at the Oddfellows Hall that successfully prior to the beginning of Australia's federal government. So it should be with great pride that this council, Federation Council, introduce a proposal to our national government that will effectively inject energy to establish the so badly needed adjustments to Section 92 of our Constitution, so that the prevailing problems of travel and trade due to the COVID-19 between states are overcome for the benefit of future generations. It seems that the freedom between states law for trade and movement that was created at the Cairo 1893 conference is now overshadowed by the state's legitimate purpose of protecting public health. However, under Section 109 of the Constitution, there seems to be confusion as to whether federal law prevails and the inconsistency between states as seen in border closures. I am not claiming to be an expert in any way on this matter. However, it's been mentioned in different personal experiences of late, just recently. But I personally saw a 13-year-old youth whose father died in 1961 at a young age, and then saw his 45-year-old widowed mother with 5 children have to deal with saving the family farm, overshadowed by a tax called probate of £29,000, with the restriction of the Australian Wheat Board law of no quota to deliver grain. But it turns out the ability to sell that grain to private buyers in Melbourne under Section 92 of the Constitution, freedom between states in trade and movement, saved that farm, which last year was 100 years old, in the same family farm name. And that 13-year-old was me. So I speak with some intensity and emotion about this subject topic of the sympathy that should go, and certainly from our council we're providing it towards border, tourism and retail families that have equity being dissolved from continuing because of overnight curfews being initiated at the peak season of trade. As mentioned by my fellow councillor, the Honourable Paul Keating, said at the centenary celebrations here in July 93, and I won't quote it again, but it's exactly the same quote as Councillor Meagle mentioned earlier. And also to quote the Honourable Robert Menzies, Sir Robert Menzies I should say, the need is to convert a mass of individuals into a great cohesive nation because of the power and pride that a common national sentiment commands. With those words, Mr Mayor, I think that we have a role to play in initiating something that's got to change or be reformed. And I think we, as a council today, in a moment in history, are advocating that. And I certainly hope that council supports the opportunity for that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longmire, very, very well said. And we have a seconder. If there's no further comments, I'll put it all in favour, against, carried. Councillor Thomas, would you like to look at your motion that you suggested before?
What would you like me to do, Mr Mayor?
That you were suggesting by way of a motion?
Yeah? Do you want me to reread it?
Yeah, just the wording for Rochelle, if you like.
But would you mind making that bigger, please, Michelle? Thank you so much. Okay. Would it be easy if I just gave you my sheet of paper?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah. Do you want me to read
Would
it
you
out?
mind reading it
Sorry?
first?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That Federation include a letter to fellow Board of Councillors endorsing a parliamentary inquiry into the fundamental economic, social and resource impacts of the 2 border closures between New South Wales and Victoria, allowing additional quantitative strategies to be implemented.
Thank you very much. And we've got a seconder, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments there, councillors? If not, I shall put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And now we'll move on to the General Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Item 7.1, councillors, is a request for an extraordinary council meeting recommended to be held 2nd of February 2021. So recommendation is there that council hold the extraordinary meeting at 9:30am on Tuesday, 2nd of February 2021 to allow endorsement of the IPART special rate variation application following the recent adoption of the amendments to the fees and charges, and to adopt an updated long-term financial plan. And just for correction, I'll just take out that word recent, because the adoption of the fees and charges is further within this report, so it's preempting that. So I'll just take out the word recent for the minutes, if that's okay, and mover and seconder.
Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Wales. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Thanks. 7.2 is council are a member of the Country Mayors Association for New South Wales. They've written to council recently to seek all the rural and the regional councils' top 5 priorities for 2021. The idea being they would then consolidate those into a lobbying platform for policy and advocacy changes across this year. So there's a recommendation there. I have put some brief headings there. I think Councillor Thomas had commented previously that she would have some input, but failing any today, we have got until the end of this month to finalise these, and they would then finalise those further and go forward. So they're seeking our top 5 by the 29th of January, so happy to be in council's hands whether they wanted to look at those points I'd made around water security, economic development, digital connectivity, health, and improving recurrent funding for council's asset maintenance and renewals. So recommendation there, and as I said, Councillor Thomas may add some, and other councillors welcome.
Thank you. We're going to move it, Councillor Thomas, and seconded by Councillor Law. Councillor Thomas, did you want to comment?
Just giving some thought to council's top priorities of 2021. I would imagine other merged councils possibly could be in the same line of thinking, but I was thinking completing our LAP would be a top priority for us this year. Maintenance of our assets, which we already have. I was also thinking along the lines of affordable housing. This could be something that we nearly need to visit within this upcoming 12 months, because as we know, there's been a huge impact and influence, especially our border communities, with people moving to take up residence, lease, rent. So affordable housing could be options, might be something that could be sitting on our table. And the other point of call too, with affordable housing and living standards, and I think it's been brought to our attention in the past with some of our rural villages, that are they meeting living standards where some people are living. The other thing I had was looking at our waste and our waste management strategy, and should we be investigating more circular economy. And the other point of call, rather than having just water, I was thinking about natural resource management.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Law.
I think one of the most important things is improving the recurrent funding for council asset maintenance. With all the money that we've had thrown at us, we've made some amazing buildings and things. We've done some amazing improvements to Federation Council, but these things all have to be maintained. And the maintenance costs that we are looking at in the future are horrific. And something needs to be done, that we get more money on the maintenance of things that we have already got.
Thank you, Councillor Law.
Brilliant, Mr. Gill.
Any further comments, dear councillors?
Whilst we're pondering that, I think we could probably take that point from Councillor Law and put that as the top point. And on Councillor Thomas's points, we did talk about folding some of those into that one. So I think if we wanted to call economic development being so broad, I think we could easily add jobs, growth, tourism, but we could also add natural resource management, including water security, because that water security underpins everything in that regard, I think, in terms of economic development. Our communities rely on that. Possibly the waste waste management and that circular economy could also fold into that economic development bullet point.
Yeah.
We are doing some work with Albury-Wodonga and the regional cities deal, so the surrounding councils. So I had another webinar yesterday with all the surrounding councils and the consultants and Victorian government and the federal government. And that's one of the focus areas of the 4 or 5 is that circular economy around our whole waste management, but many other things including. So they see this Albury-Wodonga and the surround as a real chance between Sydney and Melbourne to develop some things off the back of that. So we hope that all gets fed up through the committee, but hopefully we'll get some traction out of that. The LEP, I will just make a point, it's probably, it's not saying it's over the line, but as far as, I suppose, lobbying the state government, which they're seeking here, it's probably in hand insofar as we've got that funding to deliver that through the merger project. Councillor Appleyard. Director Appleyard might want to comment on that, but do you think that's on a program?
Yeah. Thank you, General Manager. We are working with the department to deliver that. It will only be a conversion LEP at this stage, but in saying that, and in conjunction with those works, we're looking at doing the land use strategy, which will identify our asset needs for future growth in the council area.
Thank you for that. And affordable housing, I think I noticed even Griffith have had a long priority to do that, and they're moving forward with some subdivisions and taking advantage of some state government programs around rezoning and land ready to go for that sort of stuff. So we could add that in as the bottom point if the council will come to it.
Oh, I think Griffith got a $11 million grant, didn't it, from the federal government?
Councillor Longley said.
Councillor Longley.
Endorsing Councillor Raw's comments, but I'd like to see added in funding for improvements to our water and sewer facilities that are badly in need of major overhaul.
So we could just add that, Councillor Longley, to that top one where we've got renewal, including strategic water and sewer renewals.
Please.
It's probably somewhere where the debate's got to.
If there's no further comments, councillors, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.3 is the final report for my section. It's a recommendation there. It's on the tender conduct report for the management of Ballpark Caravan Park Corridor on behalf of Federation Council. There's some information in there around in the open section around the tender process that has occurred, and a recommendation to go to closed session under the Local Government Act Section 10A, Part 2.
Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Longley. Questions or comments? I'll put it all in favour. Aye. Against, carried.
So that'll defer later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr General Manager. We'll now move on to the Director of Corporate and Community Services report.
Thanks. Yep. With our Director away, I'll just talk through these few reports. So report 8.1, Mayor, is a financial performance report as at 31st of December 2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments, councillors? I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
8.2 is the minutes from the 11th of December 2020 meeting of our Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Longmire. Any questions or comments, councillors? I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried. Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll move on to the Director of Development and Environmental Services report. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, item 9.1 is the standard report regarding supplying development and construction certificates approved under delegation. I would like councillors to note that we're at 90% of our usual income in the first 6 months of this financial year, which is very impressive, and the team have been doing a lot of work. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I've got a move in. Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Law. Questions or comments, councillors? I think, first of all, congratulations to your department. I think you deserve 90% of the income at this stage is great result.
It's incredible. It's been an amazing 6 months and the staff have worked flat out, so.
I'm not sure if the councillors might be gobsmacked. Is there any questions at all, or shall I put it all in favour? Against, carried.
Item 9.2 is development applications approved under delegation. Again, happy to take any questions.
Moved by councillor Longley, seconded by councillor Longmire. Any questions or comments, councillors? I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
Item 9.3 is a list of the regional and state significant development applications lodged with council or the state. The only change since the last reporting period is that the solar farm for 7 Weymouth Road in Mulwala has been withdrawn.
Okay, moved by councillor Whitechurch, seconded by councillor Meagle. Any questions or comments, councillors? And I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
Item 9.4 is the Coral Salguards New South Wales Government Stimulus Funding. As councillors would be aware, in September we received a grant for $9.2 million for upgrade works to the Salguards. At the time of receiving that grant, we weren't sure what the timelines would be for the delivery of that project or what the deed of agreement would be. We now know that we have a delivery turnaround time for until the 30th of June 2022. So the report before you is to utilise the provisions under the local government regulation to allow for selective tendering to help reduce the wait times or any potential delays that the tendering process may incur. This will hopefully reduce those and allow us to get as close as possible to that deadline.
Thank you. Moved by councillor Meagle, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Meagle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, challenging time frame. Is that right?
Very challenging.
Very challenging. However, I think that this is a really significant funding agreement that we need to take as much advantage of as we can. And whilst we would have perhaps preferred to have gone in a normal tender process, we just haven't got the latitude to do that. So happy to go down the selective tendering path, and because those saleyards are an economic driver to this council and to this region, and it's any chance that we've got to shore that up is very worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Meagle. Any further comments? Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, can I ask the Director in regard to the selective tendering process, because things have got to be done in a hurry, how does that work, the selective tendering process?
So we call for expressions of interest rather than a tender at this stage for people that would be interested in doing the works in the future. We go through the non-cost criteria at this point while we're still doing designs and putting the tender documentation together. We then go to the people who do the expression of interest if they meet the criteria, and then they just provide a tender price. So instead of taking, say, 3 months, it can be reduced down to 1 or 2 months to go through the entire process.
Just as a side issue or comment, the ELSA group are having a board meeting at Horsham next month, and David Coppolino and myself are attending that. We may come back with something of value that could do in this opportunity.
Thank you, councillor Longmire. Anything further, councillor Longmire?
Mr Mayor, thank you. In echoing Councillor Meagle's words, it's a very tight timeline for the scope of work that's got to be done, but I mean, if we get our head down and try and get the selective tendering process, which is probably going to speed it up, as you say. I'm just querying the staging of the works. I notice that we've got the car park and entrance road as stage 2. Is that going to be affected by stage 4 with large machinery coming in, excavation for stormwater and catchment, as well as excavation for high voltage power lines coming off the solar? Are we going to be digging our car park up again to get back to the main road? Or
There's several reasons that we've staged it the way we have. One, so that we can have works that can occur concurrently, can happen that way, and yes, those issues will be taken into consideration, especially for the car park. And two, it reduces the approval timelines through the EPMA Act. So all those things will be considered, but to meet the time frame we need to have a number of works being undertaken concurrently, and there will be a number of tenders and contracts left at the same time. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting times.
thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
I'll get to the next one, sorry. 9.5 20.5, councillors, development application 2020. 162, the 335 lot subdivision in Redlands Road here in Corowa. We've had a Class 1 application lodged with the Land and Environment Court based on a deemed refusal. Essentially, they have lodged this class action saying this Class 1 application as they feel that we have taken too long a time to approve or refuse the application. Any application can go through this process, and it is a 40-day period in which we have to determine. So, as you can see from the documentation provided, we have a directions hearing on the 25th of January, and this is just to make the councillors aware of this, that is what is happening, and also to formally appoint Kelly to be council's legal representative.
Thank you. So I've got a mover in Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Meagle. Questions or comments, councillors? None, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. And thank you. We've first got the addendum reports.
We'll do the addendum report now.
Yeah.
Second. So councillors, you would have been forwarded around an addendum report, 9.6, the Cora appointment fees and charges. As you can see, there's been a power of work done on this, and I have to say thank you to Angela, Irma, Joe, Alana and the General Manager in getting this report together for council. So as you'd be aware, we've been out on exhibition with the fees and charges for the Cora Aquatic Centre, and we've had a very strong response from the community. Probably the biggest response we've had is that the fees and charges should include a family pass, and that the majority of people feel that option 4 is the preferred option in the community. Overwhelmingly, the responses came from Corowa, but the age range was quite varied, which is quite interesting. So hopefully our patronage will be increased from what we have. I'd ask the General Manager if he has any comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. Did you want to move and seconder, Mr. Mayor? If that's-
Yes, moved by Councillor Whitechurch, seconded by Councillor Law. We'll move on to questions and comments.
Yeah, just echoing our Director's comments. It's been an enormous amount of work put into this work. Councillors as well have been very involved in our community through our engagement, and it obviously brings to a really nice end some of the final things needed to get this facility into operation after especially the Cora community has been without any sort of pool for over 3 years. So I think it's come to a really good situation, and it's always that. I read all the feedback myself, so over 200 odd submissions, and it's great to get that level of engagement in the facility. It's obviously attracted a lot of attention with that special rate variation application, of which it goes to the extraordinary meeting on the 2nd of February, but linked closely together, and I guess that's where the staff and councils have been really wanting to listen to that feedback. So I think some of the comments in the feedback was, council will just go ahead and do what they want, they always do. So there was obviously, some people there that weren't positive that we would be doing any changes. So I think these changes, what we're calling amended option 4, with changes from that feedback, really does reflect that the council does listen to the community. We understand that not everyone's going to use this pool. We understand there'll be people over. It's a regional asset, so that doesn't reflect where the Murray River starts and ends in regards to our borders. So it's a facility I think we're all going to be extremely proud of, and it offers something for everyone, tourists, locals. It also brings people to the town, but it also encourages people to stay in this area, move here, and exactly what our LGA need. We need a really diverse mix. We've got a terrifically cohort of our ageing residents, but we also want to continue to increase our livability for many other age sectors, and that's what these facilities do. So I understand the feedback around these fees and the mix between users versus the general rate base, but the simple fact is Cora is our largest town, and they do contribute, and the way councils work, the way states work, and the way the country works is that all our taxes and things go to a range of things right across. So I think it's been a terrific effort to put that balance into the mix here. There's a summer and a winter pass options, there's yearly memberships, and it brings in a really nice balance, I feel. So, but as the Mayor said, any questions, comments or things, it's up to the councillors.
Councillor Law.
Thank you. I think the most important thing to remember is this is an amazing facility that we have here in Corowa, but it's not just for Corowa. It is a regional facility, and I'm sure it'll be used regionally. Football clubs, elderly people with the learn to swim lessons, the aquatic things that they can do in the heated pool. It's really a regional facility for the whole of the region, and we have to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Longley.
Yes, I note item D up there about larger family memberships. I'm glad everyone listened, and now I'll be able to bring my family across, and I don't know you have enough sun deck chairs or not. But anyway, that was a great addition.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Any further questions? Councillor Meagle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation. I believe the council, as the General Manager said, has taken on board a lot of the feedback, and that we certainly recognise that this is a magnificent facility. We're trying to make it as affordable as we can for everybody, given that we still need to balance the books. And this is the joys that we as councillors have, in that, yes, we could make it a free facility for all, but unfortunately that won't be financially sustainable going forward. So somewhere along the line we've got to make a call on who we charge and how we charge, so that we can balance our books and provide a sustainable facility in for future generations. So very happy with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Meagle. Councillor Watcher.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, certainly we've got to the end of the road as far as getting the project up and running. It's taken on many, many years before we've got to where we've got to now, and many, many community meetings and consultations, but I do take my hat off to the council for listening to the community. We're never going to get it right for everybody, but the survey and the public meetings have got a fairly big response. So I think that where we've got to is good. The family membership was certainly something that they cried out for. Personally, I'm not sure that it's still low enough for what the average family may need, but time will tell for that. We have to set a price somewhere. As far as the ratepayer having to fund the pool, all of our pools in the Shire forever and a day have been required to be funded by the ratepayers. I know Howlong's runs at over 100,000, Urana and Oaklands are over 50,000 a year. The ratepayers simply have to fund those things, and there's other things that the ratepayers are funding every single day. We should be happy and lucky that we've got this facility going forward, and I'd just like to make it noted that maybe these are obviously going to be put into place, but we review them after 6 and 12 months, because we might find we haven't quite got it right, and then we come back and say, well, let's change it again. But certainly with the families, I still see there might be issues with 2 adults and 2 children. We spoke about it at length at council and has over the last few months. The definition of a family is 1 or 2 parents raising their children. Why are we to determine whether it's 1 or 2 children? That, I think, will come out in the wash, and it needs to be negotiable if that's the case. But all in all, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Whitchurch. And I'd have to say that back in our early discussions, we had an opportunity to build a pool, and it has been said that different towns and communities have got pools in the Shire, and they all cost money. But we took a distant approach, like a pool for the future, and something to encourage economic activity right throughout our Shire. So instead of just building a standard pool, we've gone far and beyond that to progress ourselves, to highlight Federation Council and give tourism and people, trade industry, a good reason to come here. So I think it was a great effort by councillors and staff to get to this point, so congratulations. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Longmire.
Yes, it's just really good to be able to sit here, Mr Mayor, on the journey. Remember 28 years ago, and in 1993 it was looked upon that something had to be done with the pool. So to do it the way it's been done and to do it in a real good manner is a success story.
Thank you, Councillor Longmire. They say the wheels of local government turn slowly. No further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And thank you, Director Appleyard. Move on to item number 10, Director of Engineering Services. Thank you, Steve. LED lighting?
The LED lighting, it's basically for notation, what the country, what they actually advised us is that they're prepared to start ASAP. So I think the latest information I got this morning was that they're due to start after the Anzac Day breaks, the Australia Day break, sorry. So it will kick off at the end of January. It's about a 10 or 12 week time span to finish the towns and all the villages within. So basically you can see it from notation.
Okay,
Any questions?
thank you. I've got a move there, Councillor Kennedy, and a second to Councillor Law. Any questions or comments, Councillor? Mr General Manager.
Yeah, thanks. Just following on from Steve's summary there, this project goes a long way back. The REROC, so the joint organisation, previous ROC of RAMJO, RAMROC and REROC Wagga had a really ambitious funding proposal put to the New South Wales State Government to do the whole Riverina Murray and as far out as Wentworth to replace, would have been 60, 80,000 or more streetlights. Didn't get up, but we're strongly encouraged to put that forward. Essential Energy have gone forward anyway, and Albury Council, I think one of the first around here to roll those out, but this council is committed to doing that as well. Funded through a loan through T-Corp, so very good interest, which council have already agreed with, but just for recapping, with a really good payback period. Environmental benefits, obviously, with the lower energy usage as well, and I think it's a great story. So 1,585 street lights to be replaced, and down through Steve and his team, they've done an enormous amount of work on just the design, working through obviously so many assets, in 1,500 of them. We're expecting some comments and things that will be noticed, brighter lights in someone's lounge room they mightn't have wanted, others will be really happy. So there will be some changes, you might get some comments and questions, hopefully largely it will be resolved through the team, as well as our staff, and Lana and our comms are doing some work on trying to get that information out, but I guess it's nothing like seeing poles up trucks and they'll be able to see for themselves what is happening. So I encourage people to spread that word around, and we look forward to that getting done, where it's good to see that it's brought forward, Steve, a lot quicker than it was going to be. Yeah.
Any questions, councillors, comments? Councillor Eagle, was that?
Yeah, just quickly, Mr Mayor, support the General Manager's comment. It is going to be a very beneficial project in terms of safety, to have that lighting for people moving around the town at night. So I think whilst there will be some comments for people that are adversely affected, I think overall it's a very great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question on that. I note that their smart system can be upgraded later.
It can be, yes.
Was that a cost of around $18,000 or something?
I don't think the costs really known, because we haven't got a lot of detail on it at the moment, so no one's, I don't think the technology is completely available at the moment, but certainly the lights that we're putting in will be able to, that's smart technology, and all sorts of other bits and pieces can be added in at later dates.
Which should be good. All right, if there's nothing further, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
Item 10.2, Mr Mayor, is a tender assessment report for the purchase of a road patching truck. Detail there, just one that's allowed for in our 2021 budget, plant replacement. And there's a recommendation there that we deal with the finalisation of this report in confidential under section 2A, part 2 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Law. All in favour? Against, carried.
10.3 is a similar report. It's to do with our panel for pre-qualified for wet hire to Federation Council. So I said at the briefing the other night, wet hire simply means that you get the person that's hiring you, the plant, provides the operator and the fuel and all that. And there will be a report come to the next meeting about dry hire, which simply is when you hire a plant and put your own operator and supply your own fuel and whatever. So this one is for wet hire, and again we recommended that we deal with that in confidential under section
Thank you, and moved by councillor Wales and seconded by councillor Thomas. All in favour? Think against? Carried. Thank you, Director Carmichael. We've still got 15 minutes, so I might as well push on to item number 11, notice of motion, question without notice. We've dealt with most of those. 11.1 is notice of motion from councillor Thomas, Lake Mulwala water level. Councillors, you've obviously read it. Would we have a seconder for that motion, please? I've got a seconder, councillor Wales. Would you like to speak to that, councillor Thomas?
That's so good. So obviously, as a reference point, I've had to use some background information. I've learnt a lot, put it that way, and I've learnt where they gain their information and their height levels. Everything's measured at the wall, and as stated, they use the Australian height datum, which is the vertical height, and it currently sits at 124.8. As mentioned in the notice of motion, any below the 1.24, it becomes dangerous for any recreational use. So just in light of that and in support of that, I've been looking at this document from Goulburn Marri Water, and it's the Lake Mulwala Land and On Water Management Plan. This was released in 2015, went out on consult, was endorsed in 2016, and was a 5-year document. So I envisage being a 5-year document. I would like to think that the now Federation Council will have input into reviewing this document, because the former Corowa Shire is cited within this document. But one point of call, one small paragraph in this document is that encourage safe public areas for recreational users while ensuring protection of operational requirements and long-term water quality as a resource for local and downstream users. So they endorse recreational use within this. And the other point of call was the, as I said, the engagement or re-engagement of the Lake Mulwala Recreational Reference Group. I think this would be an opportune time to re-engage that committee to get their feedback as well.
Okay.
Any questions I'm happy to
Thank you,
take.
councillor Thomas. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Whitechurch.
Mr Mayor, obviously the recreational users are the biggest part of our tourism all the way along the river system from Lake Hume down to Mulwala, and we see that, or lack of that now with the COVID, but in light of the Corowa Steering Committee that's trying to look at getting a lock into Corowa, comes off the back of what Councillor Thomas is saying there, whereby the water level simply goes up and down so much in this patch of water. And the only two towns that are affected are Howland and Corowa, both in the Federation Shire, and then we get to Mulwala, where the whole late season effect of a falling river or a rising water. Maybe we've got to hook up with Andrew Reynolds on Friday. Maybe that can be discussed at that point to just bring to light where it's at, because certainly whilst you would see maybe 1 foot, 30 centimetre rise or fall in the lake, potentially you can see that overnight in the Murray River at Corowa. So we could see a 1.5 metre over 3 weeks at Corowa, and it traditionally seems to happen at tourist times. So I think if we're going to be looking at it, we certainly look at our whole river flow from the whole Shire in respect to the lake and the river system, if you have with that.
So I'm just wondering now, councillor Thomas, obviously you'd be happy to look at the whole system as well, whether to deal with the motion as it is, or maybe have a bit of an inclusion with councillor Whitechurch.
I'm really happy to have it included to encompass all.
Sorry?
I'm really happy to encompass all. That's fine, because it actually is part of our journey, and as you would be aware, Councillor Whitechurch and myself sit on a committee which we've been brought to the table. We weren't at the table for a number of seasons, so it's great that we're back on the table, and that actually committee runs from the Yarrawonga Weir up to Hume, and they had to, when I was able to engage on the last teleconference, there was actually some really key personnel. So once again, maybe we could get this particular item onto that agenda as well for the next meeting. just one more point of call is that even the Bureau of Meteorology, who are in the process of pulling together a water information website, they also have recognised the following group, recreational users, as a key part of their delivery of getting water information put onto the BOM site. So
Yep, thank you.
there's a push for it.
Councillor Thomas, if that's okay with you and the seconder, we've got point number 2 just about to come up to have a review, and if you're happy with that, we'll... It just might be good in our further discussions to cover the law. The council consider this further in conjunction with the Cora Lock approval. Proposal, sorry.
Unless it is approved, maybe.
Yeah. Councillor Thomas, what do you think?
Yeah, that's
You okay with that?
Councillor Whitechurch.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe Councillor Thomas's original motion where it says
Add to it.
the date of it in Lake Mulwala, somehow we word that to include
Encompass.
encompass the river system from Lake Hume to Mulwala inclusive,
Yes.
with the varying heights when recreational vessels are in use. Because here we are now with the highest Murray River we've seen continual for many, many years, and we've got no boats, we've got no tourists.
A static height for the river system.
Which would effectively make Lake Mulwala the same, so long as they put in what they take it what they put in.
Exactly. Okay, some
Sometimes
wording.
not that so easy for them.
Some wording there, please, Councillor Whitechurch.
Well, the
At Lake Mulwala and encompassing the river system to
The Murray River system.
the Murray River
system between
from
both
Lake Hume
lakes.
to Lake Mulwala.
Yeah.
I think it's important that there's static bigger stage.
To Lake
It
Hume.
does.
To Lake Hume.
Two lakes.
How's that?
Yeah, I think that's all right. Happy with that?
Excellent.
You could possibly still leave that second point there,
Yeah.
just to strengthen the Cora Lock thing.
Happy with that, Councillor Thomas? And the seconder, Councillor Wyatt?
Most definitely, Mr Mayor.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Longley?
Yes, I support the proposal. I'd just like to, while you guys are around the table with the water guys, is to ask them why they raising and lowering that level so much, because it's undermined the banks, particularly at Howlong. The river's bottom's come up, the banks have disappeared, the trees are back into it, and it's just making a hell of a mess, and it always has. Years ago they used tanks to clean out all the trees to make them so the flow would increase through the river, and now they've putting the trees back in because they've recognised the damage they've done. But again, the new valves they put in some years ago, of course, raising and lowering, and as Councillor Whitechurch said, it can drop up and down a foot and a half in a matter of hours. And of course, with the carp in there, they're undermining the banks as well as the water. I'm not sure who the biggest environmental damager is, it's the Water Commission or the carp. But anyway, bring it up to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Thomas?
Can I just hit the round reply to my fellow Councillor Longley? As you would notice in 11.3, I'd actually like to put a recommendation to the Murray-Darling Association to go to their AGM so we can advocate in and around. So if you'd like to have an additional thought and bring it to the table, you've got probably 5 minutes to pull it together.
Yeah, you're talking about the next motion, though.
What I'm saying is that Councillor Longley can have an additional motion if you'd like to see it go to Region 2 and then to the AGM. I'm quite happy to see additional motions go and be endorsed by Council.
All right, well, in relation to 11.2, any further questions or comments? 11.1. All in favour? Against? Carried. Now we'll deal with 11.2, notice of motion, Councillor Thomas, Lake Mulwala, New Bridge Crossing. Moved by Councillor Thomas, do we have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Thomas, would you like to...
12 months on, and what have we learned? Any feedback would be great. We had this similar 12 months ago. At that particular stage, we were asking, we all knew about 2020 and the Weir Bridge closing. Well, they've given us a date now. They're saying June 2021. What else happened 12 months ago? We all got a flyer in the mail. Councillor Kennedy, did you get a flyer in the mail about bridge maintenance?
Yep.
Yep, you did. I want to read you a paragraph. Yarrawonga Weir Crossing closing in 2021. From mid-2021, the Yarrawonga Weir Crossing will close to all traffic. The Weir Crossing has been used as an alternative route between Mawela and Yarrawonga since it opened in 1939 and provides a convenient detour route when the bridge is closed for maintenance or repair work. Next paragraph. Once the weir has closed to traffic next year, which remembering this was going to happen in 2020 but didn't happen because we've had another thing called COVID-19, once the weir has closed to the traffic next year, motorists travelling between Mawela and Yarrawonga will need to detour via Corowa or Cobram in Victoria when the Mawela Bridge is closed. We recognise the impact of this additional travel for residents and visitors to the region and are planning to carry out several stages of proactive bridge maintenance. A few things going on here. When is this bridge maintenance going to take place? Is it acceptable that we ask our communities to travel via Corowa or Cobram to get to Yarrawonga? Think about that concept. Is that logical? We have a few residents who might have a restricted licence and they need to go to the doctors. Where's the doctors? In Yarrawonga. We can hardly ask them to travel via Corowa or Cobram to get to their doctor's appointment in Yarrawonga. Probably surpasses their restricted licence. You've got that element. You've got the young mum who's a school teacher. Do you expect her to get up at 5:30, an hour earlier, to travel an hour round trip to drop off her child? Where's the childcare centre? In Yarrawonga. Okay, so there's a few concepts going on here. Do we find that comment acceptable? No, I don't. And I would like to think our community doesn't either. So, we've got three situations here. When is the bridge maintenance going ahead? Is it going ahead? Is the Weir Bridge definitely closing in June 2021? And what is the response from our state government and federal government in and around our Green Route Bridge? When's it going to be delivered? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, and I did get a seconded, didn't I? Was it Councillor Kennedy? Any other further questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against? Carried. Okay, 11.3, notice of motion from Councillor Thomas for recreational water. Can I have a seconder for that one, please? Seconded by Councillor Longley. Councillor Thomas, would you brief us on that?
No worries. I mean, it's really quite simple. As you would know, you have the opportunity to advocate on local government and community's behalf through the Murray-Darling Association. So with our upcoming AGM, we have to really start thinking about motions that we'd like to have put onto the table at the AGM to advocate, and that advocacy goes to our state, federal governments and relative authorities. As you would know, we've got this beautiful lake at Lake Urannah. Recreational water use. Is it a permanent source of recreational water? A few months ago, we received a letter from the Swan Hill Council for a letter of support in and around recreational water. I just really need to highlight the importance of having access to recreational water. Recreational water is as important as environmental water. It is as important as our irrigation water. It is as important as our stock and domestic water. Hence, that's why I'd like to see this motion go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any further questions or comments there, councillors? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against? Carried. Okay, 11.4. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Longley. How long bypass? Would you like to... sorry, I'd just like to get a seconder, please, for that motion. Seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Thomas. Councillor Longley, would you brief us on that bypass, please?
Yes. I understand that the council has done, or is doing some work on it, on a potential bypass to the Hawkins Street. The reason I'm raising it today, because it's becoming more and more urgent. The main street is actually a disaster at the moment with heavy traffic. We've got another company starting, going to include another 100 truck movements a day out of on top of their existing truck movements. We've got all the traffic coming through from Logic, over the river, Barnawatha, container terminals there heading north. Thursday afternoon, there are 4B doubles parked in the main street, trying to turn left into Sturt Street off Hawkins Street. 4B doubles to the length of that took up 3/4 of the block. And it took something like 15 minutes for them to clear. People were parked in the cars, couldn't get out. That's quite a common occurrence according to the traders. I did observe an older woman trying to cross the street. She was on a walking stick. Can't. The traffic's that thick and fast. Somebody from the butcher shop had to escort her across the street. According to the traders, that is quite a common experience. So it's dividing our town or our business community. So if we could get that action fairly quickly, for heavy vehicle bypass at least, it would be appreciated by the Howland community. So I'm raising it today so that our local politicians and everyone else that's involved are aware of the issues.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I might just have one suggestion for you, just to run by you, to maybe change that motion from the Howland bypass to the to Howland heavy vehicle alternative route. Often find that you could direct some tourists or shoppers out of the precinct if they take this road. So just that, if you didn't mind that, changing that wording just to, if that's it with you in the seconder. Any further? Is there any further questions on that one, councillors? Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, can I ask the question in regard to currently Hawkins Street and Sturt Street are part of the link of the Riverina Highway. There's 280,000 being spent by plus our council is delivering $280,000 worth of funding on the edges of Hawkins Street. Transport New South Wales are doing the main concourse, so I got that right, Mr. Carmichael. So where's the part of Transport New South Wales? If we're talking about a heavy bypass, does that adjudicate where the Riverina Highway goes? Because where would the money come from at this point in time? I'm imagining that this project would cost in the millions. And so at the end of the day, have we got the money? So there's a number of questions that have got to be answered, but to pursue it is reasonable, but certainly at this point in time, how do we get something there that we can do?
Councillor Longmire, only thing I'd say is that once it's raised to council and it becomes a motion books, then we would go down the normal channels, local, state member, seek funding from wherever we could. Obviously these things would take outside funding to do, but this is a starting point to put everything into action. Would you like to make any comments?
We have applied for funding through the inland rail, or whatever they call it. I think we applied for about $5 million, which is about what it's going to cost. It does raise an issue simply because you put in a heavy vehicle or alternative route doesn't necessarily mean that the highway, the Riverina Highway, will change. The Riverina Highway will probably still go through the way it does now. But that's happened in a lot of other towns where a lot of people. If I go back many years when I was a bit younger, I used to do very quick trips to Albury. There was always a bypass around the top of Howland from Beasley, because they cut that off by blocking streets off, so we all had to go down the main street. Look, we've done some very basic planning, and it will be a long track unless we can pick up some funding from a source such as one of these inland rail. I'm sure the funding we applied for there was $4.8 or $5 million. So yeah, we basically have a corridor there, or nearly a corridor, with some of the uninformed roads to the north of the township, and it would tie in with Kulof's development as well. They've already acknowledged that they may have to give up a little bit of their land, I think, to work in with that. So yeah.
Can I, the gentleman who's got a comment.
Oh yeah, just tying onto that, and Councillor Longley's probably on the same track anyway, but it's also important regardless of whether it's an alternative heavy vehicle with that corridor preservation, that couple of blocks up for you, which has been highlighted in our workshops about the water and sewer and stormwater and drainage, all your utilities corridor as well, just for any future growth of how long, but the safety of the main street obviously, but I think Councillor Long is on that strategic path too to make sure that we can start to plan our next connector across that east-west link through there. So is that your...
Yes.
Excellent. Any further questions, councillors? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried. Thank you. Now we have 11.5, question with notice, Memorial Park, Cross Street. Councillor Longley. To our Director of Engineering Services.
Yeah, I've actually, there's, how do I say that? Since that's been put there, I've actually discovered some, what's happened to, the story behind this is that I've got some complaints in town from the fire saying that it was council that the fire brigade had applied to do a coal burn Cross Street Reserve. Because it is a real fire hazard. Anyway, the fires applied to do the burn and they sent it off to the Albury office. The Albury office then went to supposedly council and got knocked back for the burn. And so they asked me why that happened the other day. So I then checked with the fire captain. That was the words that he got back to from Albury, that there was council that knocked them back. Mr Carmichael has not received any approaches from no one else appears to have received any approaches from the fire brigade. So we're not sure whether it's a council issue. It may well it may well be a Lands Department issue rather than a council issue. But I'm investigating now via the fires to see who they actually rang, and because it is a real disaster waiting to happen, that reserve at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Because you said you're happy with the news that you've got, you might like to move to suspend.
Okay, right.
Moved by Councillor Longley, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch.
Morning tea.
For morning tea. All in favour? Against, carried. Thank you.
That's 5 past 11.